Hello and good evening. I hope all of you are doing well. So, in today's session, we will take the problem of tribals, right, in India, and especially we will talk about indebtedness among tribals. See, in Anthropology paper 2, section B is basically tribal India, and where you must understand what tribe is, what is what are scheduled tribes, what are their problems, right, from past to the present, and how we can help them to develop alongside the mainstream society while preserving their uniqueness, right. So, we try to integrate tribals in our mainstream culture. Our purpose is not to wipe out their cultures entirely, rather how we can put in our modern civilizational frame, right, with their own uniqueness. Now, before moving into this problem and all, let us try to see what a tribe is, right. What are the general defining characteristics of tribes? How will you say that this tribe can be a scheduled tribe? If there is any tribe which is out of that ST list, what are the constitutional provisions that put any tribal into that list, right? And then naturally I will tell you how to write this question on indebtedness. So let us start with a general definition of tribe, right? See, here you must understand that there is a difference between what a tribe is ST, scheduled tribe. Both are not one and the same, but you can say that there are some tribes which are included into this list. There may be some groups which are not in this group, right? And these ST communities, they are a constitutional category. Article 342, right, says that president can include certain groups on the basis of certain criterias, and what those criterias are. Those criterias were mentioned by Lochore committee. Before Lochore committee, many committees and commissions gave some criterias on the basis of which we define what a tribe is, right. What a scheduled tribe is, not tribe we will talk separately. So what the tribe is, and then I will move on to the scheduled tribe, right. So how you can define tribe? There are some general defining criterias, right, general characteristics on the basis of which you can find a definition of tribe. There have been many scholars who defined this word tribe in variety of perspectives, and they also do not you can say have a common ground, right. Their definitions also vary. So there is a debate on the definition of tribe itself. Many scholars like Herbert Risley, right, Warrior Alvin, Dr. D.N. Majumdar, T.B. Nayak, all these people try to define what constitute a tribe, and none of them agree on a single definition. That is why there is a debate. There exists a debate on how you can define a tribe. So here what I am telling you, I am not giving you a definition. That is a discussion for a separate class when we will be in the class, right, which we are starting from 12th of this month, right, within 2-3 days. So that is a separate discussion. When it comes to tribal India, we will start that. Here I will just share some of the characteristics of Indian tribes, and that include that they have a common definite topography. That means they live in a particular area, and that area, if you see, most of the tribes live in remote areas, but not all. That also you must understand, right. So they live in remote area. That is one characteristic. They have a sense of unity, right. They have a sense of unity, and tribes are homogeneous groups. Homogeneous groups means they are racially similar, they are culturally similar, they eat similar kind of food, they speak a similar lingua franca, right, they dress in a similar way. So they are homogeneous group and they have a sense of unity, right. that homogeneity brings unity among them. They differentiate from them to others, right? Us versus others concept में वो believe करते हैं. Tribes are normally exogamous groups, right? But not, it is not, not exogamous, sorry, it is endogamous, not slip of tongue. Endogamous, that means they marry within their tribe, right? For example, we say that caste is also a similar endogamous group, that caste people marry within a caste. So similarly, tribes are also endogamous caste, and this principle is not followed in principle, right? It can be variation, there can be variation where some nearby tribes can intermarry, and there have been instances, there have been studied where the tribal people marry to the caste people marry to the tribal people. They have been studied by Dr. D.N. Majumdar, Srivastava, right, and all these people, right. Next, what defining characteristic is that grouping is based on strong kinship relations, right. The kin network is very, very strong. Okay, so that is another defining criteria to define Indian tribes, right. They have distinct political organization like village organization, age set system and all. They have egalitarian values, right. Egalitarian values, that means they don't differentiate, they don't have a hierarchy of people, right. They have egalitarian values, that means all are equal. सभी लोग एक समान हैं in tribes. They have, they practice primitive religions like animism, like animatism, totemism, right. You might have read these concepts. If not, then we will discuss these all topics, these religious beliefs which are being practiced by tribes, right, in different areas, even India, right. Then their technology, they live in pre-industrial technology, right. The kind of technological advantages we have in our food production, in our consumption practices and all, right, they don't enjoy the similar benefits, right. Rather, they are exploited because of these developmental practices that we enjoy, right. So this technology, this industrial revolution have benefited the mainstream society, but at the cost of the tribal values and tribal societies, right. So that is another thing, that they live in primitive technology, right, pre-industrial technology. And some of the tribes in India, they even practice pre-agricultural technology, right. What is pre-agriculture? Agriculture is a technology, you must understand that, because here you use various implements in a particular way and to gain maximum yield per hectare. But there are some tribes, and these tribes which live in pre-agricultural technology, right, they are known as PVTGs, and there are 75 such groups, right, which was defined by Debar Committee, right. So there are such also committees, such tribes also, and then whatever the tribals produce, this produce of tribals is for their self-consumption. It is not for the market. But they live in the monetary system nowadays. But if they do not produce something for the market, how they can have money? Because anything they are going to buy, either it is food, it is medicines, or any kind of thing, they require money. But their production system is largely for themselves. So how they can get money, that is another question to ask. So these characteristics that I have put in front of you, that belong to these tribes. And if you know that they are homogeneous group, they practice some primitive religions, they live, they have pre-industrial technology, they produce only for subsistence, not for the market, but they live in the monetary system. How can they survive? How they can sustain? That is another issue, right? So all these things we will see when we are going to talk about the problems of tribals. Next question is, what is a scheduled tribe? So scheduled tribe is defined under Article 342, right? And the definition, they are included, President can include under Article 342, and Article 366 says, which talks about the definitions, it says those who are included by President, right, under this article will be known as scheduled tribes. And there are many tribal groups which are demanding a ST status. There are many tribal groups which are demanding ST status, but still they are due to get this recognition. They are not included in this list. So that is a big question to ask, right? That why they are not included into this list. And now, what are the defining criteria on the basis of which any group may or may not be included into this list, right? So the Lokur committee, it gave 5 criteria on the basis of which any group can be included into this ST list. And what those criteria are: geographical isolation, distinct culture, right? Then primitive traits, backwardness, and the last thing is shyness of contact. These are the 5 defining criteria that were given by Lokur committee to include any particular group or community into this ST list. Now, you know that these 5 criteria also shows these things, that shyness of contact, geographical isolation, distinctness of culture, right, primitive traits, or you can say backwardness. These traits tell us something, that there is something problematic within their traits, all right, on the basis of which we define. Let me tell you one by one. Geographical isolation. I will just tell you how you can think, right? This thinking, right, the way you can think about these tribal groups will definitely help you to widen your horizons, and you can address any question in regard to the problems of the tribals, right? If you understand their characteristics, their defining characteristics, you can write any answer in much better way. Okay, so let us take what Lokur committee has to say about these traits. So geographical isolation is one. Existence of primitive traits is 2, right? Then distinct culture, backwardness. This backwardness we can talk about their economy, subsistence mode, right, and pre-industrial technologies and all. And finally, we can talk about their shyness of contact. They do not try to mingle with the mainstream society. So these are the 5 basic defining traits as per the Lokur committee, right? So if they live in isolation, that means most of the modern technologies have not reached them, right? If they have not, if they do not have the access of the modern technologies like education, healthcare, you can talk about general awareness. So if they do not have this access, right, naturally they cannot compete with our mainstream society. And there is no question of competition, rather they cannot intermingle even. They cannot live a basic living, right? So their living standard is naturally affected by this, right? They are not part of our economic system even, our market system even. If they are not part of that market system, naturally they are lagged behind in the course of development. Okay, the second thing is primitive traits. So these primitive traits that we are talking here, we can talk about their social practices, their marital practices. Some of the groups practice polygamy, right? Even polygynandry. Here, polygamy is a broad term which include polygyny, that means one husband and multiple wives. Polyandry, that means one wife and multiple husbands, and there can be polygynandry where multiple husbands and multiple wives. This typical practice, polygynandry, this was named by Dr. D.N. Majumdar while he was studying the communities of Jonsar Bawar near Dehradun, right? So Khasa community, he observed that Khasa community practice such type of have such an marriage practice, polygynandry, right? Multiple husbands and multiple wives at the same time. Okay, then primitive traits, you can talk about the primitive traits in their religion, right? There are certain beliefs in which कि अगर आपको किसी का you have to establish the crime, then sometime you have to take a coin from the boiling oil. अगर नहीं जला, that means you did not commit the crime, and जल गया, that means you are the sinner, you are the criminal. So these such primitive practice. There was some tribes which practice head hunting, like Naga tribe. Okay, so even these things, these that from the moral standards of the modern civilized world, they seems a little bizarre, but they are not bizarre. They are prevalent among tribal groups, right? Then they have a distinct culture, right? They have a distinct culture which is characterized by egalitarian values, which is characterized by homogeneous culture, homogeneous in the sense of their racial affiliation, in the basis of their linguistic criteria or the language they speak, right? And then backwardness. This backwardness we can talk in terms of economic development, the use of technology, right? Access to the education and healthcare facilities, all these things we can talk about, right? So I just told you that some of the tribal groups, they live in pre-industrial world, and some of them live in pre-agricultural world. That means they even do not practice agriculture. So what kind of economic development and how they basically sustain in such a low production system where the climate change is happening, right, which is due. So if such a thing is there, if climate change is a problem, big problem, then still this backwardness, this poverty, right, this lack of resources will further be a problem for these tribal groups. Next is shyness of contact. They don't want to mingle with the modern world. Even if you want to go and talk to them, they don't want to accept you as theirs, right? That means even if you want to bring change, they will run away from that. Whatever services you are going to offer, they may not accept in the same way. So what you have to do, if you want to change them, if you want not change, if you want to solve their problems, if you want to provide the solutions for their problems, then you have to consider their own characteristics. You cannot say that this is we have for you, this plan we have framed for you, and you will get what is required for you. It is not we that are going to decide that what they need and what they do not need. It is for them to decide that what is good for them and what is not good for them, right? Let us not choose for them. That is why we are studying these problems of the tribal. The study of the problems of the tribal is from the anthropological perspective. Now, what is the anthropological perspective here that I am going to talk? Whatever you study here for the tribal, we want to study from their own perspective, from amic perspective. Native's point of view. Amic perspective is native's point of view. Native means the inhabitants, how they think, how they perceive their worldview, right? How they express themselves. If we have to understand their problem, then we have to sit at their place. We have to put ourselves into their shoes, right? We have to empathize with them to understand their own problems. And if you can understand their own problem from their own way, you can find a better and lasting solution, right? If you think that you can say that this is the problem the tribals is having, so that is not the problem. That is why what anthropologists do is that they go to the field, they live among the tribal, do the field work, and then they find out that whether they have problem or they do not have any problem. And that is why what anthropological perspective is, right? So this field work, that is why we cite the case studies. Why do you write these case studies? In the answer, it is because that you are showing an anthropological perspective, because these scholars have studied this, right? And that is anthropological perspective. Some people say that, sir, anthropological perspective kahan se laye? Ye to GS ka answer lag raha hai. So this is where this field work and case study, where you can quote a scholar, you can write the name of the tribe. For example, if you are to give the example of indebtedness among tribes, so I can give you a few examples, right? Like one example, latest example by B. Sudhir and R. Ravi Kumar, they studied Irola tribe, right? B. Sudhir and Ravi Kumar, R. Ravi Kumar, they have studied the Irola tribe, okay, of Kerala. There are other case studies in which you can quote. I will just come to this topic very soon, right, when we are going to discuss. So these field work, these case studies you can quote at multiple levels, right? Say, if you are to the causes, you can say that these people, they say that what are the problems? So these people say that indebtedness among tribals is due to poor economic conditions, drinking habit, industrialization and urbanization, lack of land records, administrative inefficiency, delay in getting judgment, oral mortgage of lands in the hand of non-tribal, non-possession of judgment, right? Then fear from police, many lender activity, all these are the factors quoted by these scholars, right? So what we are doing, we are showing that these are the causes suggested by these people. Similarly, what are the consequences, right? So consequences you can write. In consequences you can write that Kotlas was studied by Dr. Nadeem Hasnan, right? And he found that this is responsible for land alienation. So this is a consequence. Indebtedness का consequence क्या है? Land alienation, right? Kotlas के अंदर land alienation हो रहा है, right? So in this way you can think. Okay, then you can talk about best case studies, right, or the solutions, right? So the next point that I want to take you forward in this point in anthropological perspective here is the third thing is that you have to see is that anthropological perspective is the holistic perspective. Now what the holistic perspective mean here is that holistic perspective mean that you include everything. Anthropology studies everything that starts from your biological features to socio-cultural to political to economic to religious and whatever we can think of, right? But you cannot include everything. But most of the broader headings you can pick up and you can put here. So that is where you can see, you can show it. Right, you can add some comparisons also, right? So it is comparative also. You can compare one tribe to the other to show that they did something better, so you can include that. So these are certain things on the basis of which you can include an anthropological perspective in any question or in any answer that you have to answer, right? Now, I gave you a little bit idea about what is a tribe. Now, and I gave you that problems of the tribals also, right? कुछ idea दिया आपको कि उनके कुछ characteristic traits हैं which was suggested by Lokur committee, and on the basis of these characteristic traits you can see that they themselves, there are some problems which are inherent in their culture, right? I will tell you some more things about their culture, about their unique culture, distinct culture. They spend very extravagantly on their festivals, fairs and marriages. Okay, they many tribes have a drinking habit. Okay, so these practices are also responsible for their problems. There is money lenders activity, the formal monetary system that of which they hardly are aware. They have a unique homogeneous culture. That means they are not very accommodative to the changes. And if they are not accommodative to the changes, so anything that, any technology or anything that you want to bring into them, it will take time. And in the turbulent time in which they are going to accept or reject that thing, their condition will only worsen. Okay, so let us look forward that what that tribal problems are and what this problem of indebtedness is, right? So the problem of indebtedness is, you can say, how will you define it? How you can define it? Indebtedness, right? That means in debt. So why debt, right? This is a problem of debt bondage, right? Or you can say having, or you can say burdened by debt. Now just try to understand that tribals were living in isolation. They were not part of the monetary system, right? So, but now they have the problem of debt. So this debt problem is because of something, right? And the primary factor is the introduction of the monetary system. Right? So indebtedness among tribes is characterized by debt burden, right? Persistent debt burden due to the introduction of monetary system, and which is rooted in their own socio-cultural characteristics, socio-cultural and economic characteristics, as well as it is worsened by the introduction of outsiders into the tribal habitat. So what we have told to the examiner in the definition itself, that it is due to monetary system, it is due to their socio-economic characteristics, and it is due to the outsiders also, right? So here you are telling to the examiner about everything in the definition itself. So when you move on to the next thing, next heading, that is the causes, right? What more you can do here, I am not going into very much detail into that. You can quote some statistics, right? Although statistics में आपके पास you don't have the all India statistics of the debt burden among the tribal. So that is why it will be difficult for you to quote the statistics or the level of indebtedness, right? Because whatever statistics, even if you have, what statistics you will have statistics from the formal sector, right? The debt which is taken by the tribal people from the formal sector or from the institutional financial institutions like banks, NBFCs, right? But that is not all, because you all know that most of the debt which is taken by the tribal, even in the even non-tribals also, is from the money lenders and the local you can say what you call in from local mahajans, or you can say Seth, okay, वहाँ से लिया जाता है, Okay, so debt burden जो formal sector में, that is why it is very difficult to quantify the level and extent of debt burden. But what is very concerning to us about this indebtedness, we know about from the NCRB data, right? The quantum of suicides committed by the indebted tribal people, that concerns us. Not only this suicide level, but the kind of impact it have on our tribal is a very huge concern for us, right? So that you can quote in the consequences of it, right? You can write in the consequences that what are the consequences of this indebtedness among the tribals. So causes. Now when you talk about the cause, this is a general framework that I am giving you here, that whenever you have to write about the causes, you have to see that causes can be endogenous and the causes can be exogenous. That means these endogenous causes are the causes which are rooted into their own distinct culture, tribal culture, and the exogenous causes are rooted in outside, right, in our mainstream system. You cannot say that these are their own inherent characteristics. So endogenous characteristics is, what is the endogenous feature which is responsible for this debt? See, they have a poor technology. That means they live in pre-industrial technology. Many of the tribal group, they practice, shifting agriculture. Okay, some of them practice hunting and gathering. So they rely largely upon them. Malayer Paharia do not plow their land because they believe, according to LP Vidyarthi, that it is like tearing the breast of Mother Earth, right? Plowing the soil is like tearing the breast of Mother Earth, so they do not plow it. So they live in poor technology. That means yield is poor, and if the yield is poor, that means they cannot have sufficient for their family to feed, for the other expenditures like healthcare, like education. Okay, so if they have to fulfill their own basic things like even marriage fares, they have to borrow from anyone, and there comes the exogenous cause, the monetary system, the introduction of money lenders, right? You can talk about their own unique cultural traits, the drinking habit, extravagant expenditure. Let me draw it a little bit higher. Right, drinking habit, then extravagant expenditure on marriages, fairs. Okay, then these are the causes, general causes, endogenous causes: poor technology, drinking habit, extravagant expenditure. Okay, and even their bizarre belief systems, right? And those beliefs disallow them from adopting the modern technology, right? What can be the best thing for them? And if they do not adapt that, if they do not adopt the best technology, how they can improve, right? How they can have the best quality of life? We are not saying that they should be deprived of their own uniqueness and their own religious beliefs, but at least they should have sufficient to eat, they should have the normal and decent health care, they should have the access to the education in their own mother tongue and in their own curriculum. They should be allowed to develop on their own genius, on the lines of their own genius. So moneylenders, this monetary systems, right, this is the exogenous cause. Okay, what else can be an exogenous cause here? See, the displacement can be, or you can say, they are displaced from their own homeland, right? Heavy-handedness of the administration, the market economy, right? The market economy is also responsible for this factor, this thing, right? Then you can say there is exploitative practices of the moneylenders. Then most of the loans that they take is from the moneylenders, or you can say lack of presence of here institutional credit facilities. That means banks की access नहीं है उनको. Then poor legislations and ineffective implementation, heavy-handedness of the administration. All these are some of the basic factors responsible for this. Now, let me tell you some of the case studies that can help you better understand this practice of indebtedness among the tribals. So, what are the basic problems of this indebtedness? There are many systems even in India which are responsible for this kind of indebtedness, right? So what are those basic problems? There are when we are talking about these causes, so we can write the drinking habit, we can write all these things, and let me give you some case studies in regard to that, in regard to the causes, right? So we are doing here the definition, then we were on causes, and in causes we have discussed the endogenous and exogenous. In endogenous we have discussed what is related to the tribals, and in exogenous what lies outside of it, right? So in causes you can quote some case studies of the activities of moneylenders, right? So what is the activity of moneylenders and how they exploit the tribals? So there are a few case studies. One case study you can quote that of Nadeem Hasnan. He have quoted one case study of the Kotlas, right, of Jonsar Bauer, which were exploited by the moneylender, Punjabi moneylenders. So what he has to say here, that Punjabi moneylenders, they were settled there in the area Tarai region where Kotlas are living, right? And because of their activity, because of the activity of the money lending activity of these Punjabi settlers, these were indebted, right? They were given loans by these money lenders, and then they not only get indebted, some of them because bonded for life, right? So that bondage, that converted into bonded labor system, right? तो ये हम consequence में बात करेंगे, लेकिन आप causes में बात कर सकते हो. Similarly, there are such studies from many parts of India, right? You can quote this B. Sudhir and all, so they are talking about the causes. So B. Sudhir, he and R. Ravi Kumar, they have enlisted some of the causes. So what were those causes? Those causes they have enlisted. It vary from drinking habit to ineffective legislation to the activity of the money lenders among the irregular tribes. So these two case studies you can quote. Right. So that will be sufficient for you. You can just make a graphic in which you can write endogenous and exogenous factors. Okay. And among those endogenous and exogenous factors, you can quote all these things. Right. After writing these causes, making the graphic and writing these two case studies, you can write some consequences of it. So what are the consequences of indebtedness? Okay, so what are the consequences of indebtedness? See, indebtedness leads to poverty. It pushes the tribal groups into the vicious cycle, right? Vicious debt cycle. Okay, poverty is one consequence. So you can just make a graphic from here also that leads to poverty, bonded labor. Okay, you can write here not only poverty, bonded labor, but it can lead to, you can say, land alienation. Right. It can also lead to the displacement. Right. It can lead to prostitution, right? It can also fuel the disintegration movement, right? Because the kind of problems like Naxalism and all we have, that is because of exploitation of the tribal groups, right? And they don't find any support from the administration or from the local people. So that can be, these can be the consequences of these this practice of indebtedness. This can also lead to kind of mental torture, right? So what is the consequence? And you can quote any case study. You can quote the practice of prostitution among the Kotlas, right, of Jonsar. So that can be, that indebtedness led to the practice of the prostitution among Kotlas. That you can write. You can also quote the case study of Tamil Nadu from Tiruvannamalai district of Tamil Nadu, right, where the indebtedness lead to many problems like poverty, bonded labor and all. Okay, so that can be the consequences. And if you know that even the child labor, so these problems are not good for our national integration, right? Combinedly, if you see all these problems, it is not only harming the tribal people, rather it is a national loss for the entire nation. It encourages, it basically intensifies the security threats to our country, right? Because the problem of Naxalism, now if these people are not utilizing their potential, the tribal people are not utilizing their full potential, naturally that is an economic loss to the entire nation as a whole, right? So that is how you can see these consequences. Now, to remedy the indebtedness, many state governments have taken many steps, right, and even other than this, there are constitutional measures for the protection of tribals. Now, despite of the constitutional, legal and legislative provisions, the problem of tribals, the indebtedness persists. So, what you should do? That you have to suggest in the end. So, the third is consequence that we have just discussed, consequences, and after consequences you have to write, steps taken. The steps taken you can divide into constitutional, right, legal, right, Prohibition of Money Lending Activity Act and all other these acts that are given in this, in our booklet also. And finally, some schemes and programs which are specifically meant for the tribal development and to improve their socio-economic condition, right. So, these are few steps that you can quote. So, in constitution, you know that there are many provisions that are there specifically to help the people in tribal regions. There are, 5th and 6th schedule in which special provisions are given for the development of tribals. There is Article 244 which prescribes special monetary benefits, right. There is the special power to the local councils and to the state government, to the governor, right, which can regulate the business of money lending, right, in the 5th schedule area. Right, there is the provision to protect against exploitation of scheduled tribe in the 5th schedule area, and similarly in the 6th schedule. So, there have been certain provisions which were made in the states like Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh have passed a Money Lending Regulation Act in 1960s, way back in 1960. Similarly, other state governments also came up with these legal provisions. So, many legal provisions exist taken by many state governments. Okay. There are many administrative measures like for creation of institutionalized credit facilities, right, or you can say creation of LAMPs and PACs, large area multi-purpose cooperative societies, LAMPs, and primary agricultural cooperative societies. See, basically these LAMPs and PACs, they are meant to provide the institutionalized credit facility. That means they can bridge the gap, right, or they can relieve these tribal people from the clutches of the money lenders, because money lenders are exploiting them. They are giving them loans on a very heavy interest rate and that they cannot repay, and if they cannot repay it, naturally there will be problem and they can be bonded to them, right, and that bonded labor system will in itself is a problem. Now, what should be done, right? So, basically there are many recommendations which are given even in Khaka committee and other committees. I believe these are done. So, what are the recommendations, or what do you suggest from your side, what should be done? So, the roles of LAMPs and PACs should be intensified, right. They should be given more exposure to cater the needs of the tribal in the remote areas. Then the bonded labor system should be controlled and regulated. The bonded laborers should be freed, right. Then in the 5th scheduled areas, there is a need for better regulation of the activities of money lenders. Even today the money lending activity persists and they are exploiting the tribal people, right, very heavily, and which is taking a toll not only on the tribal but on the national security, national integration and the economy of India as a whole. So we have to implement various schemes which are meant for them. We have to provide them better technology, right? We have to connect them to the market through various, you can say nowadays market is getting digital. So we must provide that digital technology, right? So all these things, all these steps need to be taken. This is from my side in this this indebtedness chapter, right? You have to write definition, causes, consequences, steps taken, recommendations. I'm not giving you everything into it. That is, there is a reason, because if I try to explain it further, so you cannot compress that. You better keep it short, and finally you link everything to the national economy, you link it to the national security and national integration issue. Basically you have to make this thing that is not linked to only one tribal people, right? Here in your answer you have all those things, right? You have the economic perspective, you have the comparative perspective, you can write examples from 1 or 2 sides. You have that holistic perspective that you are dealing with everything, cause, consequence, step taken and recommendations. Then you are quoting case studies, and if you are quoting case studies, that further give the anthropological perspective, right? You have quoted the Khaka committee recommendation, and all these things will be very, very important. So in the next coming sessions we will take some more problems and some more detailed discussion. For this I have to end this session here, and if you have any query with regard to this, you can write back to us and we will be very happy to help you. Until then, thank you, take care, all the best.